The boardroom was burning with noise. Not with fire, though it might as well have been, but with voices, heated, sharp, cutting into one another like blades. Executives in expensive suits shouted over graphs, and red numbers splashed across the giant screen. $40 million in projected losses blinked like a siren no one could turn off. Elizabeth Morgan, CEO of Mason Logistics, had heard enough. Her fist slammed down on the polished mahogany table with a sound that silenced even the angriest voices. Bang! The echo rattled across the room, cutting through the chaos like thunder. "I don't want excuses," she snapped, her voice low but sharper than glass. "I want solutions." The silence that followed wasn't peace. It was tension wound, so tight it could snap. Eyes darted. No one spoke. And then, almost as if the universe had scripted it, the door creaked open. A man in a faded gray uniform entered, carrying a battered toolbox. His name patch read, Michael Carter. No one turned to look at him. He was maintenance. Invisible. The kind of man executives never noticed unless the lights went out or the air conditioner died. Michael moved quietly toward the wall thermostat, trying to disappear into the background as he always did. The hum of the boardroom, the smell of cologne and coffee, the weight of $100 pens signing multi-million-dollar contracts. It was a world that had never been his. But his eyes, they wandered. On the massive screen glowed the company's distribution map, arteries of red and blue lines crisscrossing continents. Something in the pattern caught him. Something wrong. Without realizing it, he whispered, almost to himself, "That's backward." The words were out before he could swallow them. Elizabeth's head snapped toward him, auburn hair catching the fluorescent light like fire. Her eyes, piercing, cold, commanding, locked on the man crouched by the thermostat. "What did you just say?" Michael froze. His heart punched against his ribs. Every executive in the room turned, finally seeing the ghost among them. He stammered, heat rushing to his face. "Forgive me, ma'am. I shouldn't have spoken. I just noticed the routing. It's backward. That's why everything keeps failing." The room went still. Forks of disbelief cracked across the faces of men and women who'd spent weeks drowning in this problem. For a long moment, the only sound was the quiet hum of the projector, an engine of truth humming in the silence. Michael lowered his eyes, already regretting opening his mouth. He wasn't supposed to speak here. He was supposed to fix the thermostat and vanish. That was his place. That was how he survived. But the way Elizabeth Morgan studied him, measured, sharp, curious, felt different. And then, as if the story had always been leading here, the world seemed to rewind. 3 days earlier, the alarm clock buzzed like an angry insect. 5:30 a.m. Michael Carter groaned, dragging himself out of the warmth of bed into the darkness of his small apartment. The air carried a faint chill, the kind that seeped into bones before sunrise. He moved quietly through the 2-bedroom space, careful not to wake his daughter just yet. The kitchen light flickered when he flipped the switch, a problem he kept meaning to fix, added to a list that never seemed to end. Breakfast was simple: peanut butter toast, apple slices arranged neatly on a plate, and a carefully packed lunchbox with Sophie's name written in faded marker. By the time she shuffled into the kitchen, hair tangled from sleep, Michael already had her inhaler tucked in his pocket. "Morning, Peanut," he whispered, ruffling her hair before kneeling to braid it with surprising gentleness. His calloused hands were careful, precise, as if each strand of chestnut hair were something fragile. Sophie adjusted her red-framed glasses, eyes wide and curious. "Dad, did you pack my asthma medicine?" Michael patted his pocket. "Right here. And your teacher has the backup at school." She nodded, reassured, though the memory of a terrifying midnight hospital trip years ago still haunted both of them. He never took chances with her health again. On the bookshelf, a photo frame seemed to watch over them. Maria, his late wife. Smiling, radiant, forever frozen at 29. 7 years had passed since she died during childbirth, and yet her absence was stitched into every part of their lives. Michael whispered perfect as he tied off Sophie's braid. But the word meant more than her hair. It meant keeping their small world intact, no matter how broken he felt inside. When Sophie finished her breakfast, Michael slipped into the bathroom mirror for a final glance. His uniform was clean, though worn from countless washes. The patch that read Michael had begun to fade, like even his name was disappearing. But on the kitchen counter sat something out of place, an old engineering textbook, its corners curled, its pages stained with coffee rings. Complex diagrams were scribbled across scraps of paper tucked inside. Every night after Sophie fell asleep, Michael opened those books. He never finished his degree. Life had ripped that chance away when Maria died, but the dream hadn't left him. Mechanical engineering, systems, efficiency. It was the language his mind still spoke in secret. By the time he left for work, Sophie waved at him from the window. Her small silhouette framed in the morning light was his only reason for everything. Mason Logistics gleamed like a fortress of glass and steel. Michael arrived after 3 bus transfers, the morning rush already buzzing through the facility. Executives in pressed suits strode confidently through revolving doors. Michael walked through the side entrance with the other workers, his toolbox heavy at his side. In the basement locker room, he changed into his gray uniform. His coworker Ted gave him a nod, silent, familiar. They were ghosts together, moving through the building unnoticed, fixing everything yet seen by no one. And that was the way it had always been. But not for much longer. Because soon, the invisible man was about to shake the entire foundation of Mason Logistics. And it all began with 3 words whispered under his breath. That's backward. If you were Michael, standing in that boardroom, would you speak up or stay invisible? The hallway smells like lemon cleaner and burned coffee. Michael Carter moves through it like a shadow with a toolbox. He knows this building better than most maps know cities. Which elevator sticks? Which motion sensor takes 2 claps to wake? Which conference room always runs hot when PowerPoints run long? He is the man people call when the air feels wrong, when the faucet won't listen, when the world needs to be quietly put back the way it should be. He likes the quiet part. Mostly. 3 days earlier, the morning began the way his mornings begin. He wakes before the sun. He pads across thin carpet. He flips the switch, and the kitchen light coughs once, twice, then glows. Another thing to fix. Not today. On the table, peanut butter toast. Apple slices fanned like a paper sun. A lunchbox with a unicorn sticker peeling at the edge. Sophie wanders in, glasses fog from sleep, hair a wild halo. He braids it slowly, carefully, like threading a line through a needle. Medicine, she asks. He taps the pocket over his heart. Right here. And Ms. Patel has the spare? She does. He says it softly, the way you say a prayer. The memory of fluorescent ER lights flicks at the back of his eyes. Beep, 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 her tiny chest working too hard. He swallows. We're covered. On the counter sits the old textbook, Thermodynamics. Stubborn as an unpaid bill. He keeps it open to a page marked with coffee rings and a penciled note that says, Flow follows truth. He doesn't remember when he wrote that. He knows it's true. He kisses Sophie's forehead. Perfect. She grins a gap-toothed grin. Even if I'm not. Especially then, he says, and means it. The first bus is late. The second is standing room only. The third smells like rain and damp wool. He arrives at Mason Logistics with a wet jacket and a dry list of work orders. In the locker room, Ted nods, a 2-man language they've spoken for 7 years. They change into gray, and the world stops seeing them. Upstairs, the building wakes. Heels click on tile. Security badges beep. Screens glow alive, pulling up numbers that never sleep. Elizabeth Morgan arrives, as if the doors unfolded just for her. The air seems to sharpen. Tall, charcoal suit, eyes like a line drawn with a rule. Her Mercedes glides into the nearest space and stops with the confidence of a period. Michael is mopping the lobby when the revolving door exhales her into the morning. Papers slide out of her portfolio and skid across the floor like startled birds. He is on his knees in a breath, gathering them by their crisp corners. The top sheet is a routing schema. Lines like veins. Nodes like arts. To anyone else, shapes. To him, a story. A wrong one. He hears himself say it before he can catch it. This link, it's inverted. Elizabeth's gaze doesn't find him because an assistant does. The man's smile is polished chrome. Thanks, the assistant says, plucking the papers from Michael's hands without looking. Ms. Morgan has Tokyo in 2. Michael nods. He returns to his mop. He watches her step into the elevator. The doors close like a curtain coming down. He swallows the impulse to say more. He has learned the choreography here. When to appear, when to disappear. He twists the mop and lets the gray water fall back into the bucket with a soft, tired slap. Have you ever held the answer on your tongue and felt it burn? He becomes a rumor in the walls, replacing air filters above boardroom while the talk below turns nervous. Asia is at 40% capacity. Europe's overweight. The Hamilton contract. He tightens a screw with slow, steady turns. He listens. He connects. The voices are puzzle pieces. They don't know they're a picture yet. In the corridor, 2 managers pass him mid-conversation. Regional optimizations aren't saving us. The model's missing something fundamental. He adjusts a thermostat. He hears their fear. He tastes copper in the air. Numbers don't lie. Systems don't forgive. He doesn't either, not easily. Not the world that stole his degree 3 semesters from the finish line. Not the sudden quiet after Maria. Not the way people see a uniform and forget there's a mind inside it. But he forgives the building. He knows what it needs. At lunch, the maintenance room is empty. The vending machine in the corner blinks like a small, patient spaceship. He starts with a napkin because paper feels honest. Pencil moves and a world appears. Hubs. Flows. Priorities not by place but by need. He draws arrows between load types and time windows. He reroutes the paths that fight each other into ones that listen. It looks simple. The kind of simple that takes years to understand. He sits back. He exhales. His hands shake just a little. Isn't that strange? How the right thing can feel like trespassing. He folds the napkin once. Twice. Tucks it into his pocket like contraband. What happens if he's wrong? What happens if he's right? His phone buzzes. Sophie, Dad, can I call? Math emergency. He smiles. Always, he whispers and answers. Her voice is sunshine. Mr. Jackson says if I know the answer, I should raise my hand. Mr. Jackson sounds very wise, Michael says, leaning against the cool cinderblock wall. She's quiet. Then, you tell me that too. I do, he says. Then why don't you do it at work? Silence. Not empty, full. The kind that reveals. He presses 2 fingers to the napkin in his pocket. He hears paper whisper. He hears his own fear louder. Because grown-ups forget, he says finally. Sometimes we need a reminder. Consider this your reminder, she says, serious as a judge. Then she giggles. Love you. Go raise your hand. The call ends. The vending machine hums like a dare. He doesn't move for a while. By Friday, the building smells like crisis. Coffee and sweat. Meetings that refuse to end. Emails that begin with urgent and end with now. He climbs into the ceiling of the executive war room to fix a rattle that's driving someone mad. Below, patient's phrase. If we don't solve this by Monday, a voice says tight as wire, we eat 40 million. And Hamilton walks. What about rerunning the European routes? Minimal gains. We're missing the core. He closes his eyes. He can see it in the dark. Flow follows truth. Their system flows against it. The fix is right there, a bridge no one will cross because the wood looks different. After the meeting, he waits in the hallway like a man debating whether a river is fordable. He finds the assistant, the same chrome smile. Excuse me, Michael says, holding out the napkin. This might. Of course, the assistant interrupts, taking it, glancing, not seeing. We'll make sure it gets to the right place. The napkin disappears into a folder that looks important and feels like a grave. Michael's throat tightens. He nods anyway. He goes back to the ducts and the lights and the leaks. He fixes what he can touch. That night, Elizabeth's office glows against the dim floor like a small lighthouse. Michael pushes a cart down the corridor, empty trash bags rustling softly. He pauses. She stands at the window, the city burning quietly beneath her like constellations that learned how to build. Her jacket is on the chair. Her posture is straight but not rigid. One hand rests against the glass, palm flat, as if she could push the horizon back a little. On her desk, family pictures, a graduation cap, a Christmas card with children he assumes are her nieces. Success sits around her like a suit that fits but scratches. Her phone buzzes. Another alert. Another fire. She doesn't flinch. She does sigh. Just once. A sound thin as thread. For a heartbeat, Michael doesn't see a CEO. He sees a person carrying too much. He thinks about knocking. He thinks about saying, "I can help." He thinks about unfolding a napkin like a flag. He doesn't. He empties the bin. He closes the lid softly. He keeps moving. Where do you draw the line between humility and hiding? Saturday is a blur of temporary fixes that bleed into Sunday. Over time, Emergency Ops Center. Whiteboards full of arrows. Grim faces. The air tastes like hope that went stale. Michael cleans around them and watches the patterns fail. He watches smart people hit the same invisible wall. He watches how certainty protects pride and ruins outcomes. In a pocket, he keeps the second drawing, the one he made after the first vanished. Folded in quarters. Thicker lines. Clearer priorities. He feels it like a pulse. He catches the assistant outside the bullpen again. "Any chance you?" The folder shuffles. The napkin isn't there. The assistant's eyes slide past Michael to a more important face. "We're good, thanks." "Good." He almost laughs. He turns the other way and walks the long loop through the floor. Quiet, late, lights humming. He passes the break room and hears the soda machine click on, off, on. He fixes it without thinking, because fixing is how his hands pray. He tells himself, "Tomorrow I'll try again." He tells himself, "Tomorrow I'll knock." Back home, he tucks Sophie in. She sleeps on her side, one hand under her cheek, inhaler on the nightstand like a tiny lighthouse of her own. He sits in the doorway long after her breathing evens out. He opens the textbook. He doesn't read. He just looks at the formulas like old friends who haven't changed, no matter how life did. He whispers to the empty room, "What if I'm wrong?" Silence answers. It doesn't accuse. It waits. "What if I'm right?" he tries. Silence is kinder to that. Sunday morning. The sky hangs low and gray. Michael watches the weather through the bus window. He watches the city move like gears. At Mason, the crisis center runs hot. People talk fast. Screens flash red. Elizabeth is there, hair pulled tight, sleeves rolled. She commands the room like a conductor who learned the music by ear and sheer will. Michael wheels his cart past the break room. A small cough. Then a second. Then a breath that catches. He stops. He turns. Red glasses. A small hand on a plastic inhaler. Panic widening brown eyes. "Sophie," he says, voice breaking the way a dam does. Sudden, unstoppable. Her chest rises. Falls too quick. He moves, fast and steady, everything else evaporating. In the doorway behind him, someone else appears, sharp and sure. Elizabeth Morgan. For a moment, the world holds its breath. The hum of the vending machine is the only sound in the break room, until it isn't. Sophie's breathing comes in short, sharp gasps. Her small hands fumble with the inhaler, red glasses sliding down her nose. Fear flickers across her face like lightning. Elizabeth Morgan steps into the room, stopping cold. The woman who commands empires doesn't think, doesn't calculate, she moves. She kneels beside the girl in a rustle of fabric. Her charcoal suit still smells faintly of cedar and perfume, but her voice is stripped bare of authority, softened by urgency. "Sweetheart, may I help?" Sophie's wide brown eyes blink with tears, but she nods. Elizabeth takes the inhaler, checks the chamber, primes it once. Her hands are steady, practiced. "My niece has asthma too," she murmurs. Sometimes the medicine sticks. Here. We'll try together. Deep breath now. The hiss of the inhaler breaks the silence. Sophie inhales, chest rising slow and shaky. Another breath. Another. Color crawls back into her cheeks. The door bursts open. Michael stands there, pale, eyes frantic. His toolbox clatters against the floor as he crosses the space in 3 steps. Sophie. She looks up and beams at him, gap-toothed and brave. I'm okay, Dad. She fixed it. Michael freezes. His eyes meet Elizabeth's, those sharp, calculating eyes that usually slice through executives. Now they hold something gentler. Human. Mr. Carter, she says, surprising him with the weight of his name. Your daughter's fine. Just needed a little help. Michael exhales, a sound somewhere between relief and guilt. Thank you, he whispers. His voice is rough, worn thin by fear. Elizabeth nods, but Sophie, never one to stay quiet, fills the silence. Dad, I told her about your map. Michael blinks. What map? The one on the napkin, Sophie insists, bright with pride. The one that makes all the trucks go to the right places. Elizabeth's head tilts, eyes sharpening again, not cold, but searching. Map. Sophie nods, so hard her braid swings. Dad fixed the whole company. He knows how things should move. He was almost an engineer before. She stops, glances at her father, uncertain if she said too much. Michael's face flushes, equal parts shame and grief. Sophie. But Elizabeth cuts in, voice quieter than usual. I'd like to see that drawing, Mr. Carter. He hesitates. His hands curl into fists at his sides. I gave it to your assistant yesterday. Elizabeth's gaze flickers, then hardens with dawning realization. And it never reached me. Silence. Thick. Heavy. The kind that makes the hum of a soda machine sound deafening. Elizabeth stands, smoothing her suit, her tone decisive. Can you recreate it? Michael swallows. Yes. But. No, but. She looks at him the way she looks at numbers on a balance sheet. Cold, exact, demanding truth. Bring it to the boardroom Monday morning. Sophie beams, as though her father has already won. Michael feels his chest tighten. He wants to refuse, to crawl back into invisibility. But her small hand finds his, squeezes, and the choice is no longer his alone. That night, their apartment becomes a workshop. The dining table vanishes under paper, pencils, rulers. Sophie sits cross-legged in her chair, narrating like a tiny professor. See, if you start from the warehouses instead of the headquarters, it's like water flowing downhill. It just finds the fastest path. Michael smiles, his pencil scratching across paper. Exactly, Peanut. Systems want to flow. You just have to listen. Sophie grins, proud to have guessed right. Told you I'm good at this. You're better than good, he says, adjusting his sketch. The napkin version becomes something bigger. Lines cleaner, arrows clearer, logic undeniable. Yet doubt coils in him. He sees Maria's photo on the shelf. He hears Sophie's words echo. You tell me to raise my hand. So why don't you? The diagram blurs as fear whispers. What if they laugh? What if you're wrong? He drops the pencil, rubs his face. What if I can't do this? Sophie looks up, puzzled. But you already did. He stares at her. Her certainty is brighter than any lamp. Later, after she's asleep, Michael sits alone at the kitchen table. The drawing waits in front of him like a dare. The apartment hums with quiet. The clock ticks loud in the silence. He whispers into the stillness. Tomorrow I raise my hand. Monday arrives. The boardroom hums like a storm about to break. Suits fill chairs. Coffee steams. The air is thick with doubt, with fear, with $40 million bleeding through the company's veins. Elizabeth Morgan stands at the head of the table, her eyes sharper than ever. But when Michael enters, gray uniform against dark suits, her gaze doesn't waver. This is Michael Carter, she says. He has something we've overlooked. The COO scoffs openly. A maintenance worker? With respect, we don't need plumbing advice. Elizabeth silences him with a glance. We're out of options. Let him speak. Michael feels the weight of every stare. His throat dries. His hands shake around the folded paper in his grip. Then he remembers Sophie's voice, small but steady. Raise your hand. He lays the drawing flat on the polished table, and the room leans in. The boardroom feels colder than usual. Maybe it's the AC, maybe it's the eyes. Dozens of them, executives in crisp suits, investors with polished watches, staring at one man in gray. Michael Carter, maintenance worker, tool belt still clipped at his side. The COO leans back in his leather chair, smirking. Well then, Mr. Carter, please enlighten us. How exactly does one fix global logistics with a wrench and a mop? A ripple of laughter. Not loud, but sharp enough to cut. Michael's throat tightens. His fingers brush the folded sheet of paper, still warm from his hands. He thinks about walking out. Thinks about hiding again. Thinks about Sophie. He remembers her voice. Raise your hand. Michael clears his throat. It's not about tools. It's about flow. The room stills, not with respect, but with disbelief. Elizabeth Morgan, at the head of the table, tilts her chin. Her voice is steady, cool, commanding. Let him speak. And so, for the first time, Michael Carter does. He steps toward the screen, every footfall loud in the silence. His boots don't belong on this carpet, but here they are. The way you're routing trucks, he begins, unfolding his drawing, is based on geography. You send vehicles to cover an entire region before moving to the next. On paper, that looks efficient. But in practice, it's backward. The COO scoffs. Backward. Michael nods once, steady. Yes, you're forcing the system to fight itself. Empty trucks, wasted fuel, delayed deliveries. Your own numbers show it. Asia under capacity, Europe overloaded. You're treating warehouses like destinations instead of hubs. That's the mistake. He pins the paper to the board. Lines and arrows dance across the page, alive with meaning. If you prioritize by load type and urgency, not geography, you cut wasted trips in half. Trucks move where they need to, not where a map says they should. The system stops tripping over itself. It flows. Silence. Thick, electric. The COO laughs, sharp and dismissive. So simple, is it? My analysts, PhDs, mind you, have worked on this problem for weeks. You expect us to believe the janitor solved it on his lunch break. Michael feels heat in his chest, but his voice stays calm. I expect you to believe the numbers. Run it. Test the northwest corridor. If I'm wrong, you lose nothing. If I'm right, his eyes flick to the glowing $40 million loss projection. You save everything. For a moment, no one moves. Then Elizabeth's voice cuts through, cool and absolute. Run it. The operations center hums like a command post. Screens light up, fingers fly over keyboards, algorithms churn to life. Michael stands shoulder to shoulder with Elizabeth, though the gap between their worlds still yawns wide. She leans forward, eyes locked on the numbers. He does the same, though his pulse hammers in his throat. The COO mutters under his breath. This is absurd. But then the first results appear. 15% reduction in empty miles. Fuel costs sliding down. Deliveries aligning with deadlines. Impossible, someone whispers. Another hour. The curve keeps bending. Numbers shifting like stars, finding their constellation. 20% savings. Routes balancing like scales finally aligned. Michael exhales, slow. Elizabeth glances at him, her lips curving in the faintest of smiles. The first true smile he's ever seen from her. When it works, she says softly, you say when, not if. He almost smiles back. Almost. By nightfall, the boardroom is buzzing. Not with chaos this time, but with astonishment. Executives who dismissed him in the morning now flip through pages of his diagrams, debating how fast the system can be scaled. Elizabeth sits with him in her office after the storm, city lights flickering like fireflies beyond the glass. The room feels quieter, more human. Where did you learn this? She asks, studying him like she's seeing him for the first time. Michael hesitates, then answers. 3 semesters, shy of a mechanical engineering degree. My wife died during childbirth. Sophie needed me more than school did. Elizabeth's expression softens, just a fraction. And now I fix what's broken. Buildings. Machines. Whatever keeps people moving. He shrugs, as if it's nothing, though it's everything. Elizabeth leans back, silent for a beat. Then, what you did today may have saved this company. I want you to lead the implementation team. Michael stares at her, stunned. I'm a maintenance worker. You're the man who found the flaw none of us could see, she replies, voice firm. Titles don't fix problems. People do. He thinks of Sophie, of the dance lessons she dreams about, the laptop she points out in store windows, the college he's never dared to promise. He thinks of nights staring at textbooks by a flickering lamp. He thinks of the napkin. All right, he says quietly. I'll do it. Elizabeth extends her hand. He shakes it. The handshake feels heavier than a contract. 2 weeks blur. Michael Carter, the man in gray, becomes Michael Carter, project lead. He fumbles with presentation slides, stumbles over corporate jargon, but every time the room threatens to dismiss him, his solutions drag them back. Elizabeth coaches him quietly, late at night, her sharp edges softening as she translates boardroom language into plain words. Explain it like you did to Sophie. Simple. Clear. That's what they'll understand. And they do. Slowly, grudgingly, the company bends toward his truth. One afternoon, Sophie visits after school. She wanders into Elizabeth's office, clutching her science project. Within minutes, the intimidating CEO is sitting cross-legged on the carpet beside her, helping rearrange colored strings into delivery routes. Michael stands in the doorway, watching them laugh together, his daughter and the woman who never used to laugh. For the first time in years, hope feels possible. The day of the big investor presentation arrives. The boardroom fills with weight, men and women who measure everything in profit margins and risks. Michael adjusts his new tie, Elizabeth's gift. A small note still tucked in the box, for the man who untangled our biggest knot. He steps to the front, hands trembling, heart loud, and then he begins. Imagine you're delivering pizzas, he says, ignoring the jargon, speaking like a man explaining something to his daughter. If you take all the North Side orders first, some pizzas arrive cold, others too soon. But if you group deliveries by time and need, every pizza gets where it should, hot, on time, efficient. That's what we've done here. The investors lean in. The numbers on the slides confirm it. $38 million in projected annual savings. A 22% increase in on-time deliveries. Fuel costs down 15%. The room shifts from skepticism to belief. Elizabeth watches from the side, pride flickering across her face. And Michael Carter, once invisible, now stands in the brightest light of the company. The applause was polite at first. Then it grew, rolling across the boardroom like a wave that no one expected, but everyone needed. Michael Carter stood in the center, the tie at his throat too tight, his palms damp. He had just finished explaining a billion-dollar company's salvation using pizza delivery as the metaphor. And somehow, against every odd stacked against him, it worked. Elizabeth Morgan's voice carried over the room, smooth but commanding. Let's be clear. Credit goes where it's due. Michael identified the flaw, designed the solution, and led its execution. Without him, Mason Logistics would be facing collapse. With him, we found a future. Michael felt heat rise to his face. He nodded once, awkward, humble, overwhelmed. But the truth was clear. The invisible man wasn't invisible anymore. The weeks that followed blurred into something new. Michael traded his faded gray uniform for collared shirts. He learned to navigate presentation slides, boardroom questions, and the constant hum of executive politics. But he never stopped carrying his multi-tool in his pocket. Old habits die hard. Sophie loved the change most. She skipped through their mornings now, her lunchbox filled with new snacks, her backpack heavy with extra science kits Michael could finally afford. Her asthma medication arrived like clockwork under the company's new health plan. And there was something else, something unexpected. Mason Logistics unveiled a brand new children's center, bright and colorful, buzzing with laughter. The idea had been Michael's, though he'd phrased it differently. If meetings run late, parents need a place their kids are safe. Elizabeth had run with it, pitching it not as a perk, but as a promise. On opening day, Sophie proudly showed Elizabeth her latest project, a model of Mason's new routing system built from cardboard and string. "I made it better," Sophie announced, pushing her glasses up her nose. Dad helped a little. Elizabeth laughed, a sound that startled employees in the hallway who had never heard it before. She crouched down to Sophie's level, smoothing a strand of hair behind her ear. Innovation clearly runs in the family. Michael watched them, something warm and unnameable settling into his chest. The final implementation numbers silenced every skeptic. $40 million in savings. 22% increase in on-time deliveries. 15% drop in fuel costs. The company celebrated with champagne. Michael celebrated by fixing a broken projector in Conference Room B. Some habits, after all, were stitched into his bones. Elizabeth found him there, crouched over the open casing, screwdriver in hand. She leaned against the doorframe, a rare softness in her posture. "Some things don't change," she teased. Michael tightened the last screw, closing the projector with a satisfying click. "Some shouldn't." She studied him for a long moment, then said, "You taught me something, Michael. I spent years overlooking answers because they came from places I wasn't trained to look. Sometimes the solution wears a gray uniform." He smiled faintly. "We all have blind spots, even maintenance men." That evening, the Carter apartment smelled of garlic and tomatoes. Michael stirred a pot of pasta sauce, Maria's old recipe, while Sophie set the table, humming to herself. The rhythm of normal life, steady and safe. The doorbell rang. Unexpected. When he opened the door, Elizabeth stood there. Not in armor, no charcoal suit, no sharp bun. Just jeans, a simple blouse, hair falling loose around her shoulders. She looked younger, almost uncertain. "Sorry to drop by unannounced," she said, holding up a folder. "Sophie left these sketches in my office. Ideas for the Children's Center. I thought maybe we could look at them together." Before Michael could respond, Sophie called from inside. "Dad makes the best spaghetti in the world." Elizabeth's lips curved. "Is that so?" Michael stepped aside. "You're welcome to find out." She entered, the scent of sauce and laughter wrapping around her like something unfamiliar but not unwelcome. Sophie rushed to her, tugging her hand toward the table where colorful drawings sprawled. Elizabeth leaned down, studying the sketches as Sophie explained each one in rapid-fire detail. Michael watched them from the stove, stirring sauce, his heart oddly calm. Elizabeth glanced up at him once, their eyes meeting across the room. Her smile carried a question, his an answer. Not promises, not yet, but possibilities. Later that night, after Sophie was asleep, Michael sat by the window with the city glowing beyond. He thought about the last few months, about napkins and boardrooms, about invisibility and sudden light. About Elizabeth Morgan, CEO, who had once walked past him without a glance, now sitting at his kitchen table with his daughter's crayon sketches in her hands. He whispered to himself, almost amused, almost in awe. Sometimes the most important repairs aren't to buildings, but to people. And for the first time in years, he believed it. What do you think? Was Michael's greatest victory fixing Mason logistics or repairing the connections he never thought he'd have again?